9. Mabel asked Sivan to drop her and Archer off at a comic book shop while he was at work on Saturday afternoon. Mabel explained to Archer the shop was within walking distance of SPITE Lane. Once Sivan was out of eyesight, they could walk the rest of the way. Sivan dropped them at Pine Haven Comics a little before 3 p.m. They watched him drive away, waited a few extra minutes for good measure, then headed out. A cold front had moved in overnight, obscuring the sky with puffy gray clouds that rolled over Lost Key like a quilted blanket. Archer and Mabel hadn't prepared for the weather. They walked along the shoulder of Blue Angel Parkway, rubbing their arms to keep warm as they were pelted with icy drops of rain that fell intermittently through the trees. Under the canopy of pines on SPITE Lane, they noted a temperature shift. The air stilled, the rain disappeared, and the air thickened with humid heat. As they crossed the threshold of broken gates and emerged into the clearing, they couldn't help but notice that SPITE Lane was sunny and warm. Archer had never felt so unsettled by a beautiful day. How is this possible? Mabel wondered. It was raining 2 seconds ago. I think it's better if we don't ask, Archer answered, forging ahead. Let's just do what we came for and get out of here. The plan he'd devised called for nothing more than a white lie. He would knock on the Timberlake's front door, tell Mr. Timberlake that he thought he might have left behind a special pen in Tyler's room on Thursday, and they would be invited inside. Tyler would pretend to look for the pen and not find it, and then they would leave, having proven that Tyler and his dad were just fine. Yeah, but what if they're not fine? Mabel had argued. They will be, Archer had countered, and there was nothing more to say. They just had to be fine. They climbed the steps of the front porch and landed in front of the Timberlake's front door. But to their surprise, it stood partly open. The house inside was quiet and dark. Archer didn't know what to do. He looked to Mabel, who put up her hands in confusion and shrugged. Archer knocked on the door, and it swung open even wider. Archer poked his head inside. "Hello?" he called out into the musty darkness. There was no response. "Should we just go inside?" Mabel asked in a hushed tone. "I'm not sure," Archer answered. It was too bright outside and too dim inside for him to see anything. "Why don't we try around back first? Mr. Timberlake might be outside tending the hives." They hopped down the steps and circled the property. The Timberlake yard was overgrown. Its grass grew high and spindly. It tickled their knees as they waded through it to the rear of the house. Various insects flew by, buzzing their ears, as they stumbled into the backyard. "He's not here," Mabel stated, unsurprised. "Yeah." Archer chewed on the inside of his cheek. He rotated on his heels to scan the neighborhood. The sunny sky, the empty house. Not a soul in sight. It was a beautiful Saturday. At least, it was beautiful here on SPITE Lane. Why weren't there children outside playing? Where were the adults that should have been mowing their lawns and painting their porches? None of this was fine. "Now can we go inside?" Mabel asked, with an impatient tug on Archer's shirt sleeve. "Sure," he said aloud, although alarm bells were blaring internally, telling him to run. Get out of here as fast as he could and never come back. Archer and Mabel went back to the front door, where they took one last peek before pushing the door open the rest of the way and stepping inside. Mabel softly closed the door behind them. "Hello?" Archer called. "Mr. Timberlake? Tyler?" As usual, the curtains were all closed. A tiny slit in one set allowed a sliver of sunlight to slice through the darkness. Tiny particles of dust danced in the beam. "This place is weird," Mabel said. "The furniture looks ancient. No TV? No radio? You swear someone actually lives here?" Archer didn't answer. He walked ahead towards the kitchen. Entering it, he found it was empty of people. But on the counter, a bevy of glass jars sat in neat rows next to the sink. Empty. Archer quickly counted them. 24 jars in all. Had the Timberlakes really gone through 24 jars of honey since he'd been here 2 days ago? The father must have been eating them too. No way the little kid ate 12 jars of honey a day since Archer had babysat. "Should we check upstairs?" Mabel asked. Archer nodded and took her back to the staircase. He scaled them 2 by 2 and went straight for Tyler's room. There were 2 empty jars knocked over on the floor next to his bed, but no child in sight. Down the hall, Archer found what he presumed to be the father's bedroom. Mr. Timberlake was not inside. The bed was unkempt, covers strewn, and on the bedside table sat 4 empty jars under a glowing lamp, drips of sticky honey visible, glinting in the light. Archer's suspicion was confirmed. Both father and son had been consuming the honey. But why? They wandered back downstairs. Archer outstretched his hand, was mere centimeters from grasping the front door to leave, when Mabel took a turn and went to the far side of the staircase. "Archer!" she called, in a half-whisper. Archer's gut twisted. He knew exactly where she was. He found her standing in front of the tiny door under the stairs. The door stood open. From below came the telltale hum. "Is this where you saw—" "Yes." "We have to go down there," Mabel insisted. "We have to check." "Do we, though? Archer?" "Ugh. Fine." Archer took the lead. "Mr. Timberlake?" he called down from the first step. "Tyler?" No answer. The next 2 steps creaked loudly as Archer descended. They creaked again as Mabel added her weight. Archer didn't know what he should hope for, that they should find the father and son downstairs or find the cellar empty. Nothing but honey and bees. What they found dashed any hope that things were fine. In the iridescent green glow of the remaining jars, most of which sat open and half-consumed on the floor, Mr. Timberlake hunched over, his back turned, Tyler at his side. They breathed strangely, in short, resonant gasps. Between ragged breaths, they made sucking noises, squeaked and slurped. Archer and Mabel glanced at one another in confusion. Archer swallowed, gathering his courage, and softly said, "Mr. Timberlake?" The man and his boy flinched, whipping their heads around to look back at the teens over their shoulders. Mabel screamed. Their faces were covered in tufted, golden hair. Their eyes were large, black orbs that reflected the glowing jars many times over. Honey dripped down their chins from gaping mouths that no longer had teeth, but instead twitching black mandibles. They were using their hands to shove the honey down their furry throats, but they weren't really hands. Their skin had turned black and crusty, and their fingers had grown long and spindly with more knuckles than any human would have. Timmy and his dad had turned into monstrous human-bee hybrids. Mr. Timberlake unfolded, standing to an even greater height than Archer remembered. He buzz-growled, and the room shook. The jars clanged, creating feedback as they vibrated against one another. In response, the bees that covered the walls intensified their flapping. Archer realized they weren't welcome visitors. They had intruded on the Timberlake hive, and it was clear the Timberlakes would defend their territory. "We have to go," Archer said, shoving Mabel back up the stairs. "Go! Go!" Mabel ran, and Archer followed. Archer didn't look back. He didn't want to know if they were being followed. He just wanted out. At the top of the stairs, he slammed the door shut and pushed Mabel towards the front door. They ran through it without closing it behind them, soared off the porch without touching the steps, and sprinted back towards Spite Lane's front gates. "What were those?" Mabel yelled as they ran. "I don't know," Archer responded. "And I don't want to know. Let's just get out of here." As they reached the edge of the pines, they scooted over to the side of the road, barely missing being run over by a car that was headed into the neighborhood. Archer witnessed the woman driving and saw the magnet on the side of her car. "Pleasant Stay Realty," it read. "Molly Maplethorpe, Realtor." "Move to Lost Key," read the tagline. "You'll never want to leave." Her face looked like the one Archer had seen on the sold sign in the Timberlake's front yard. Why would anyone want to move here? He thought. As far as Archer was concerned, he would never return to Spite Lane ever again.